Look, this is what Google Analytics 4 does with your data in certain cases. I'm going to show it to you with M&Ms. Now imagine this is your GA4 data, that's all of it. And we look at for last month, we run a report and want to see this data organized in the tables. Now, what you would expect it would just start organizing all of the data into, some sort of a something that you can consume. What actually ends up happening is in some cases, it'll just do this. It'll take part of the data and then it starts organizing it to tables. What does this mean? This means that you have things like these red ones are overrepresented in this group, whereas we only have 1 here and 4 here. That means if you look at, let's say these are purchases, it would tell you you're doing better than you actually are. And this is called data sampling. It takes out of whole population of data, it just looks at part of it. Google does this to show you the reports faster and probably to encourage you to start using their paid services like BigQuery, where you can see unsampled data no matter what. So keep in mind that using sampled data has some drawbacks because you're using estimates instead of exact numbers. This means you have higher risk of inaccurate insights and sampled data becomes less useful for detailed analysis. Now, this depends a little bit on how much of it is actually sampled. The more it's sampled and the less it's useful. So let me show you how you can see this in GA4. So this is the traffic acquisition report and just default report that GA4 comes with. And you can see there's this little green check mark here. This means you have unsampled report. You see 100% of the data. Great, no problem. I'm looking at 28 days, so usually you're not gonna have that problem if you're looking at any of these default reports. Where it gets a bit tricky is if you start adding more dates. So for example, here I have an example for 12 months. Or if you have a big shop where you have a lot of data coming in anyway, then you might encounter this issue even in the default reports. And you can see there's this exclamation mark. If you click on it, heavily sampled report, you see I only see 3% of the real data. So they took 3% and they're showing that to me. This is crazy. Now, for most of you, this is not going to be a problem because this is just a bot attack or something that happened in one day, 34 million events. It's just not, you're not going to have that. But where you might have this is when you start adding, for example, the comparisons or filters, or if you're using the exploration tab, that's where it might get a bit tricky and the sample data comes up much more often. So whenever you're adding more filters, or if you're looking at the longer date range, then I would always check that you have this green check mark and that you're not looking at sampled data. So if your data is 95% unsampled, that's probably okay to use for your basic analysis and you can get insights from your data. But anything below 80% is almost unusable. And if you have to report something important like revenue to your management, then I would only look at unsampled data. On top of that, you might also see a warning of data thresholding, which just means there was too little data for specific dimensions, so they were grouped into the other. And this is done not to show sensitive information about individual users' location, interests, or other sensitive data. So they're just protecting the users. And by the way, if you struggle to get insights from GA4, then check out my GA4 for e-commerce course, where I specifically focus on analyzing data and getting actionable insights, leaving all the techie stuff to other courses. For more information, check the first link in the description. Now you know about data sampling, but GA4 default reports are full of metrics and dimensions that you don't really need, and using them will just waste your time. That's why you should watch this video next to learn the most useful reports in GA4.